For more information on my programs, please visit masajati.com. That's MASSAJADY.com. Hello, this is Masati. Welcome to my podcast, Exponential Intelligence. Today we're going to be talking about a highly controversial subject on hallucinogenic drugs. This one specifically, ayahuasca. The title of this podcast is called Ayahuasca, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. We're going to go in depth and we're just going to jump right in. This topic is one that's been coming into my mind quite a bit as of past few months, actually. And I've seen documentaries about it. I've seen a lot of buzz around it. I've seen some ads. I've seen chat groups talk about it. I'll tell you why this is happening. It's because the purity wave that's washing through this reality, it's expressing itself in many ways. As this wave comes through, it creates a sense of urgency. It creates a sense of, say, wanting or desiring, or just being all out, say, scared to do something about ourselves. To go to a higher level, to awaken, to feel complete, to feel stabilized, whichever way that you want to go, or to create, say, potentiality. Because when things kind of crash or clarify, that's where most of the abundance happens. Whether it's physical abundance, like most millionaires are made after a crash, financial crash. Most spiritual awakening is made after, say, a crash. So it's a fantastic opportunity as this wave washes through to take advantage of the opportunity, the situation that's coming through. As the fresh frequencies coming through, we can latch on. Okay. One of the ways to do it, one of the safest ways to do it, is obviously exponential intelligence, because there are no side effects. The only side effects is you detoxing. Okay? There are other forms of doing it. So many other individuals go to a lot of healers. We're not going to be talking about that. Or they use hallucinogenic type drugs like ayahuasca. And that's what we're going to be talking about today on this special podcast, about the use of ayahuasca, and then it blends into other hallucinogenic drugs, which is the same, but more so ayahuasca. And I want to clarify, say, the good, the bad, the ugly about ayahuasca. It's very important, because unknowingly, many people think that since it's been done for, thousands of years through, the tribes, that it's safe. It's a safe journey. It's people have gone through it. There's schools of thought that use ayahuasca to accelerate, but there's a lot of pitfalls to it. Okay? So we've gathered some questions from the audience. We're going to go through that, and then also my observations of what I've seen on working on people through ayahuasca, that have used ayahuasca. But first, this is from healthline.com, just to give you a little brief on what it is, the details of it, what they use it for, side effects, and then the benefits of ayahuasca. And then we'll go into the EI version of the good, the bad, and the ugly side of ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is a brew made from that Banisteriopsis kappa and Psychotero verdis plants. I might have slaughtered that. Sorry about that, guys. But you get the gist. Taking ayahuasca leads to an altered level of consciousness due to psychoactive substances in the ingredients. I'm not going to go into the process of how they make ayahuasca in depth, but briefly, they keep boiling these plants and they keep filtering out the water, and then eventually it gets concentrated, more concentrated, more concentrated. Ayahuasca ceremonies are typically led by an experienced shaman. Ayahuasca takes 20 to 60 minutes to kick in, and its effects can last up to 6 hours. Typical effects include visual hallucinations, euphoria, paranoia, and vomiting. So overall, from what I understand, is that you take the ayahuasca, which is obviously poisonous to your system, and then your body goes through, say, these convulsive states, trying to kicking out the toxins. And then, since it can't, after you vomit and so on, you start to hallucinate. Again, the poisons start to go into your brain stem, from what I'm seeing. I'm not a doctor, but just as it goes, and it goes directly through underneath your tongue initially, which starts the expulsion process, again vomiting, and then it rapidly goes from the stomach right into, say, the base of the brain, and then it goes up into the brain, and it takes a little while before you feel it in your body, and that's probably most likely where the hallucinations start. It's almost from what I'm seeing in EI perspective, it's almost like dream states. So when dream states happen, there's a chemical that gets released. That chemical inhibits you from moving. If that chemical wasn't there, like sometimes it happens in your dreams, like you're running and then you're actually physically running. So there's that chemical that stops you from mechanically acting out your actions in your dream state. Ayahuasca does the same thing. So it's the same neural network. I'm not a scientist, but again, this is what I'm seeing. It's the same neural network as, well, your brain, your dream center. It takes over. Potential benefits of ayahuasca: you may experience positive long-term life-altering changes. This may be due to the effects of ayahuasca on the neurological system, just as I explained. This may benefit health, particularly brain health, in a number of ways. It may improve psychological well-being, may increase the mindfulness capacity of your brain, and improve your overall psychological well-being. May improve mindfulness, mood, and emotional regulation. May help treat addiction, anxiety, treatment-resistant depression, and PTSD and addiction disorders. Okay. So I'm just going to go through the list and tell you why or how ayahuasca does that. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical doctor or anything like that, but just tapping on how ayahuasca works on your system. Okay. So the positive long-term life-altering changes. The reason why that is, okay, and this is very important, and I'll get into that later, but just right off the bat, okay, ayahuasca, just like anything else, has positive benefits if you are an awakened being. Just straight out. Okay, this whole talk is about that. Okay, so let me just say it again. Ayahuasca, if you are an awakened being, or you are at a level, let's say that you're not awakened, but you're aware of all the crap that you have around you, so it's not part of you, and you're ready to let it go. I'm going to tell you the difference later on. But if you're an awakened being, these will have benefit side effects, like positive long-term life-altering changes. The reason why that happens is because it takes you into a near-death state. It literally borders you on the death space. Now, some people might not come back out of that death space, depending on how, say, depressed or suicidal you are, because, well, if you're in that state, taking ayahuasca, not a very good idea. Not a good idea at all, because, again, it disconnects you from time and space. I'm not going to get into how depression and suicide work in detail, but overall, what happens is that you're centered. You're in the present moment. Okay, depressed people or suicidal people, so that center, you get pulled from it further and further and further and further away. Okay, the further you are away from your center, the more disconnected you feel. The more disconnected you feel, the more anxious you feel, and then you get to a point where there's a breaking point where, well, it's kind of like Bluetooth, right? Where the source and the receiver, it gets too far away. There's no connection. The connection breaks. Well, that's when you start to think about suicide or commit suicide or have a random accident. Right? There's no randomness, by the way, right? Although it would look in the physical realm. So ayahuasca basically takes you to the point, and if you're not strong enough, well, you disconnect. So something has to happen either then, during the event of taking ayahuasca, or say later on. Okay? And I bet you can verify what I say. Some people randomly have, say, a death after taking ayahuasca, or a strange death, or commit suicide. So for those individuals who are awakened and you're groomed, say for me, I was awakened, groomed, so when I had my 2 near-death experiences, it allowed me to catapult to higher realms rather than going to level 1, level 2, level 3. It's like I went to level 100. Boom. I would say there's a detox effect, but since you're groomed, you can let go of it really fast. Okay? So that's how that works. May benefit health, particularly brain health, of course. So overall, brain health and some of the other psychological benefits of this is basically it resets you, because it is a near-death type experience from what I'm seeing, because it's a poison. It's a near-death experience. What it does, it puts you close to that near-death space. It resets you in time. Much like having, if you've ever had a deep sleep, like really deep sleep, you wake up, right? And then you're so refreshed. Of course, that sleep has probably regenerated you physically, gives you time to regenerate, recapture yourself. But most importantly, the reason why we sleep is because it resets you in time. That's another podcast, by the way. So it brings you back into the present moment, or synchronizes you with the universal clock. So the clock of the universe that dictates nature, where your body is connected to that universal clock to tell you, say, your algorithms, right, day, night, and so on, which tells you what chemicals to release, what times, and so on, like that. So it's very intricate clock systems for you. I'm not going to get into that either. So anyway, it resets everything. That's how it does that. By taking you into that death space, you get deeply reset, and, well, you feel refreshed. The issue I have with that is, how long are you going to stay in that space before your old patterns start to pull you away? Okay? And this is a big issue, because every time you try ayahuasca, well, it resets you, but then like a rubber band, your old patterns, your distortions will snap you back to your old settings, your old clock settings, which is of distortion. And then you take ayahuasca because you're somewhat awakened, and boom, resets you every time. Then what happens? It's like you slam harder and harder and harder back into your reality. So you haven't deleted the programs. So I'm not condoning or promoting ayahuasca in any way. However, if you're doing EI and you've gotten to the point where you can really let go of everything, and again, it's a deep feeling. Some people get attracted to hallucinogens like ayahuasca or something similar to that, where you're awakened, like I said. It allows you to sink into that perfect timing, right? And then you stay there. That's the key. You're groomed enough. You're strong enough to stay in your in sync with the universal clock, which is obviously of abundance all the time. Okay? So it's rapid achievement. So that's a benefit. But again, I highly, highly caution you that you should be awakened. Okay? May help treat addiction, anxiety treatment, resistant depression, PTSD. Those are all time functions. All those things are time functions. Any type of addiction, if you were present in the moment, strong, completely in your full capacity, you would not be addicted or anchoring or needing to anchor to anything, right? Time distortion. Anxiety, treatment-resistant depression. What the hell does that mean? And then PTSD. So basically, those individuals, what happens through whatever situation, you've been, say, traumatized, so you are scared of being in your body or in the moment, the present. So you step out, hence you have anxiety, like I mentioned earlier how that works. And then further enough away, remember, we go into suicide. So from there, ayahuasca resets you back into time, and then you're good to go. Again, if you're at a level that you are awakened, you probably get bored hearing this, but repetition is very important in this case. So if you're going to do it, you're going to do it safe. Okay, so that's just that's not even the meat of this stuff, of the content that we're talking about. Potential side effects: taking ayahuasca can result in serious side effects, as it can interact with many medications and may worsen some medical conditions. Those with medical conditions should not seek symptom relief by participating in an ayahuasca ceremony. Again, this is through healthline.com. Okay. Oh, I forgot to tell you the treatment-resistant depression. What that means is those individuals who really don't have depression. Most depression that I see, or anxiety, or suicide, or ADD, ADHD, and all those similar type of situations, is that it's not a chemical imbalance, although it could lead to one. But basically, you're out of time. So when you take, antidepressants, what happens is that it disconnects you from your body's ability to stay in time. Even worse, since you can't handle being in time, or you don't know how to, right? That autonomic, say, nervous system, spiritual nervous system, is not available to you. It's not working. It's not functioning. You take medication, it totally obliterates it, and then you disconnect. And this is where the side effects of more depression, suicidal effects, those things happen. Again, that disconnect from time. So hence treatment resistant. So the opposite happens when you take those drugs. Ayahuasca, again, it sets you back into time. That's what EI does, by the way. It just does it more at a safer pace. Although some of you detox quite heavily. Imagine what ayahuasca would do for you. You would just flip over. Not a good thing. Aside from these dangers, participating in an ayahuasca ceremony means putting your life in the shaman's hands, as they're in charge of the ingredients added to the brew, as well as determining proper dosing and monitoring you for potential life-threatening side effects. And that's not the only thing. That's just the physical ramifications, or the physical responsibilities of, say, that so-called shaman or professional. And it's sad to say, most individuals who are offering ayahuasca ceremonies, they're not real shamans, and they're not real professionals. Okay? So, just as a reminder. So, summary. According to current research, ayahuasca may protect brain cells and stimulate neural cell growth. It may also boost mood, improve mindfulness, and treat depression and addiction disorders, though more research is needed to confirm these effects. So, So now that we have a good basis, a good understanding of ayahuasca, let's jump into the questions. Here's one of the questions. It's a great question. You never have even experienced using ayahuasca, so why are you even talking about it? So that's a question directed towards me. Fantastic question. I love it. Okay. It's because, well, with the abilities that I have, I can generate any frequency. So I can actually get you in an ayahuasca state, and maybe we'll do that. So if you, and I've done it with marijuana on 420. So coming back to ayahuasca, I can generate the same frequencies of ayahuasca without the side effects for you. So that's number one. So I can see what happens or how it happens. I can tap into people who've used ayahuasca. In fact, I've worked on plenty who've used ayahuasca in a very detrimental way. Okay? Or that kundalini experience that people feel initially, and then after their nervous system, it wreaks havoc on them. So I don't have to experience it myself. You don't have to experience something to actually see what goes on, especially with my abilities. You can see the full, scope of the hows, the whys, the mechanics. There's plenty of people who have done it. I can tap into that consciousness. I can tap into consciousness of how ayahuasca works, the consciousness of actual ayahuasca, where it comes from, how it dictates, how it helps you hallucinate. Again, I don't have to experience it. It's not a good reference point. A lot of people use this, goes, well, you've never experienced it, so you don't know. Well, if you are experiencing something, no matter what the hell it is, okay, good or bad, success, drugs, sex, whatever it is, it's your experience. It's your version of experience. So if you've come through abuse pattern, for example, and you're experiencing anything, you're gonna freaking run through abusive type patterns, through sex, through success, through ayahuasca. So if you're running success patterns, well, it's going to be different. So everybody's different. So don't, you can gauge what other people say. There's a ton of documentaries. Obviously, it's going to be positive effects because they want to sell you stuff and all that. So gauge on how you run your patterns, not what other people do. Okay? So I step outside of that realm. I don't look at it through my patterns. I look at it as it is. So there's no filtering. There's no prejudice on my part. I see the benefits. I see the negatives. In not just one case, overall, plus then an overall consciousness of that ayahuasca state. So basically more authority than, I would say, even the shamans or the experts that study it at a scientific level, because even their scientific approach, they're seeing it through their filters, right? So enhancing their research. And then the shamans, they have a lot of belief systems. They really don't know how it works. They just know that it works at some level, and then they attach cultural meanings, right? Spiritual meanings that might not be accurate. Might not work in all situations as well. So again, a clearer expert than anything that I've mentioned. Can it be done and not be distorting? Yes. It seems like everyone who does it ends up distorted somehow. That's the key. So let me just jump into that just a bit. So can it be done without being distorted? Yes, definitely it can be done for those individuals who are at a higher frequency or run success frequencies. And this is the rub. Okay? People who run success frequencies, most likely, their first, second, third, or maybe fourth, fifth chance of doing ayahuasca or any other drug, back in the day was LSD, right? They would have fantastic awakenings, they would have fantastic ideas, concepts, right? A lot of great musicians, a lot of great artists, architects, financiers, people on Wall Street, right? They had fantastic realizations, made a lot of great, say, contributions, but then look at their lives. Over time, they got destroyed by LSD or whatever other drug, and then ayahuasca as well. Right? Although ayahuasca, say, is a purer form versus some of the mechanical drugs, or LSD is a manufactured drug. So the key is that they run success patterns. Right? So they use ayahuasca, they benefit from it because they're success patterns. But then, since they're just running success patterns and they're not running 360 degrees of abundance patterns, EI success, so whatever the distortion that got them to become successful, say that they were being abused. This is just one example out of, I don't know, many. Say they got abused. They run success patterns, right? Say they've used that abuse never to happen, to never let it happen again. Right? So that's why they become successful. It's been a great stick. But then what happens is that success abuses them. They keep having to perpetuate success to feel safe. They didn't let go of it. So they didn't control the underlying pattern of what got them successful. Okay? So now they use ayahuasca. They become more successful because they're running success patterns. And then just like success, over time, it dictates not the effects of ayahuasca. It dictates on how you run your programming. So again, over time, ayahuasca will start to destroy you, use you. The brain benefits that it has for you, again, since it's a poison at a physical level, just chemical compounds, it's a poison. You can't keep using it over and over again. I tell people to use hydrogen peroxide at, say, a 3% solution or less. It's beneficial for you. But if you amp that, say 10%, at 10% you'd have skin burns. Okay? At 50% it's explosive. At they can't keep it stable at 100%, but close to, say, 90% or 95%. It's rocket fuel, hydrogen peroxide. It's very dangerous. Same thing here with ayahuasca. The more you take it, it becomes a toxin, it becomes a poison for you. So the benefits of what it does in your cell structure, it sterilizes, initially, from what I'm seeing, again, not a medical doctor, it sterilizes the environment for you. So the cells have a clean environment to thrive. And that's why I probably use the hydrogen peroxide. It's very similar to hydrogen peroxide, where it doesn't, say, leave a residue. Hydrogen peroxide goes into your system. It doesn't leave a residue. It turns into hydrogen, water, and hydrogen H2O. So anyway, beneficial for you. Oxygen turns into water, oxygen. So the same thing with ayahuasca. There's no residue. So it's a clean environment. So it cleans all the toxins, all the garbage, and everything else that creates. This could be good for Alzheimer's and so on, from what I'm seeing. Again, I'm not a doctor, but that's what I'm seeing. But after a while you use it, well, it starts to eat away your own cell structure because there's nothing else to eat away. So that's where it gets detrimental. So, 4 or 5 trips in a very short time period, which some schools of thought suggest. You get those 4 or 5 trips in, and you're really going to ascend higher. I don't see it that way. I just see long-term negative effects on your brain, your cellular structure in the brain, and the nervous system, the base of your brain, the central nervous system. So Don't quote me on it, but that's what I'm seeing. So we covered on why we get distorted, right? Almost everyone gets distorted because they're not running 360 degrees. They're not running EI success frequencies, although it might be beneficial. There's more to that. I just want to go through these questions. I just want to make sure I don't answer this question later on. So we'll go. I'll make a note of it, so just give me a second here. Here we go. How important is the clarity of the guide in the process? That's the most important thing. It's not even the quality of the drug, although it's beneficial. I mean, think of it. You're putting a toxin in your body. You're putting a poison in your body. So what you're saying is like, you want to have a pure poison put into your body. The dosage is important, but as far as purity goes, I mean, they're all toxins, different levels of toxins. So you're going to have multiple toxins rather than just single toxin. So the importance and the clarity of the guide in the process, that's the most important thing. Just like any other learning experience, whether it's shamanism or the shaman or the professional that's guiding you in this process, whether you're going to a church, and the priest is talking, or the mullah, or who I don't know, whoever they call themselves, okay? Spiritual and religious leaders, it's not the content of what they're telling you, they're teaching you. It's who they are. Just like EI, again, I don't teach you anything specific. I don't teach you a modality. I teach you to be your purest possible essence of yourself. And then many of you have become great healers, great mothers, great fathers, because you're the purest possible essence of a healer, a father, a mother, a kid. It's got nothing to do with the physicalness of this reality. It's only about 1%. So think about it. Back in the day, right, when ayahuasca wasn't popular, I mean way back when the tribes were using it, there were medicine men that tapped into a source and said, hey, boil these 2 plants, or 3 plants, and do it in this way. They just didn't run into accident. There was a consciousness, right, that allowed them to do that allowed them to figure it out. That's what those medicine men do. Now, if you think about medicine men, are they of the purest source? Some of them are, some of them aren't. But there aren't EI awakened levels. Because to be medicine men, you'd only have to rise up to the power of nature, or how herbs, plants, the jungle work. Okay? It's not a high level. Although many people think it's, the nature god, so to speak. So when you're at that level, say, of nature, it's most likely for humans, there's an essence of decay in it. Again, that's another podcast. So these medicine men, and they might be of good benefit, they might be, of not good character. So they've created ayahuasca. Some of the shamans, the true shamans, I can see. So these shamans, to be a shaman, basically you would go out into the mountains and wait to get hit by lightning a couple times. If you survive, well, you're a true shaman. That's how you become a true shaman. So out of the shamans, how many have been really hit by lightning, or even have ventured out, for months out into the forest to understand nature in its deepest sense, connect with time in its deepest sense, because when you're in nature, just raw nature, say the jungle, I've been there, it forces you, it commands you to be in perfect timing with the universal clock, just like EI does. You can't hold on to any of your shadows, distortions, abuse patterns, ego, anything like that. Otherwise, nature will destroy you. Hence, a true, pure shaman. Plus, getting hit by lightning, well, the closest thing to near death. Right? And again, you're pure, you're clean, you get hit by lightning, or maybe some other, although they use lightning, there's other ways of having a near death. You come back into your pure self, just like I did. So those are true shamans. So again, I ask you, how many professionals, scientists, look at all the distortions that they come through. Those people who think they're shamans, so probably just maybe a handful of real shamans that are still out there. All right, this was the conclusion of part 1 of Ayahuasca, the good, bad, and ugly. Join me on the next podcast, part 2, where we go in depth on how to use ayahuasca properly to maintain those higher levels of high performance consciousness. As always, notice what you notice, and then notice the details of what you're noticing. For more information on my programs, please visit masajady.com. That's MASSAJADY.com.